The women's event at the Olympics has concluded, and we saw Kamila Valieva of the ROC fall from first to fourth after the free program, losing out on that gold medal that she was favored to win. This comes after a media tornado surrounded her at these games since it came out that she tested positive for a banned substance.
In the free, the 15-year-old struggled on jumps we've seen her land all year, and she was clearly emotional. So we brought in mental performance expert Peter Jensen to give us more context on the situation.
Peter, were you surprised with how Kamila performed?
Not really, unfortunately. The skate to me is an outward manifestation of what's going on inside of her. And I doubt that anybody's really looking out for the person. And it's a 15-year-old. And skating has enough pressure to it to start with. You're on ice on a thin blade. There's all kinds of pressure to skating. Then you add the Olympics to that. And then what messages has she received in the last 10 days about her support staff, about what's going on? I mean, no 15-year-old girl knowingly takes a heart medication. And so this is on the people around her. And I want to know who's looking out for the person.
Obviously, there are a lot of key factors happening that are putting pressure on this skater. What are you able to see about her psychological state?
Well, not much, because, of course, I don't speak to her. And you have to find out what's going on the inside, right? Because that's where the issues are, right? And when I say issues, I don't mean, mental illness or anything. What I'm suggesting is that she's had a lot to deal with. There's a lot to process. And she may be finding out, that the people around her haven't been straight with her, for example. And that's a hard thing. When trust starts to fall apart, then you don't trust yourself. And as I said at the start, it's complicated enough to skate at the Olympic Games without having to deal with all this stuff. Now, you contrast this, for example, with Joannie Rochette's performance in Vancouver. And Joannie dealt with, the death of her mother several days before her performance. More mature, psychologically developed, mentally fit athlete who worked diligently on these skills. Because in Canada, you got to work on these skills. Because we don't have a door you can open where there's 10 other people who can come out and perform pretty much at the same level. It's not survival of the fittest, And I think that's one of the reasons why, frankly, sports psychology has really evolved and developed. And in Canada, we've been at the forefront of that development. It's not easy, but resiliency is not built in a day. There's no way that suddenly a 15-year-old becomes more resilient in 10 days after hearing that her medal might have. It's not just she is now going to impact the whole team medal. There's layers and layers of what's going on for this person. It's very difficult for anybody to sort it out, let alone, a 15-year-old girl who's right in the middle of it. Obviously, it's pretty hard to focus on this jump coming up, this spin, this footwork section, when you got all this going on inside you.
And of course, you talk about how layered everything is. How tall of an order was this for Kamila to come out here and to even skate?
I mean, most people wouldn't have had the courage to go on the ice. We saw it with the U.S. gymnasts. We saw Simone Biles go, you know what? I can't compete in this right now, where my headspace is at. I doubt that was an option for Kamila, but for her growth as a human being, I don't know who's looking out for her. She's alone on an island. Man, that's tough. That's tough.
It brings back memories of stepping out on the ice for a competition. Even in the best of times, there's this feeling of why do I do this to myself sometimes, So to go out there, your first Olympic Games as a child, feeling alone that way, feeling isolated, it's so raw. The vulnerability is immense. And then, of course, the experience of what she went through in that routine, in that program. How does someone recover from this?
Oh, it's a long way back for her, and it takes a lot of growth and development and someone focused on that. A Canadian example, not caused by the kind of things that impacted Kamila. But you take Perdita Felicien, for example. I happened to be rooming with her coach at the Athens Olympics. And, she stumbled over the first hurdle and fell down. And she was the gold medal favorite. And she worked so hard at that. And she is a much fuller and human being now as a person. But that took quite a while. And it took intentionality.
In the way that you're speaking, she needs like a village to help her, as well as she needs to have the intention of creating a strong mental framework. Yeah. What will happen if none of that is available to her?
Well, without a crystal ball, I don't know. I don't know about her own mental makeup. Obviously, she might be one of those people that wants to prove other people wrong. But it's tough to deal with. It's tough for anybody to deal with. It's going to be very hard for her. And if skating's been her whole life, and she thinks this represents her, because, this problem can only lie one place, right? Like when you see what she did in the team event, in this very program, and you see what happened today, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where the problem is. The problem is not with her jumps. The problem is not with her spins. The problem is not with anything she does technically. The problem is internal. And that's where you got to work. Because that's what's in the way. And as Lao Tse said 3,000 years ago, what's in the way is the way.
Hey guys, it's Asher and Dylan from That Figure Skating Show.
And if you like this video, and don't lie, we know you did, there's actually more where that came from.
So subscribe to CBC Sports and click it. Click it real good.